How are you tonight, John?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. So thank you so much for joining us. So for those watching, we have John Uhas from Island Wood Staining and Pressure Washing. Um, so John, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in outdoor wood maintenance?
Yeah. I became a homeowner for the first time. We had a wood
Hmm.
fence, and I wanted to stain it. We were actually living down south at the time, so
Okay.
staining fences was actually a lot more prevalent than even it is up here.
Hmm.
So I went to do it, and I'm more of a DIY kind of person. So when I went to try it out, um, I thought that wasn't too bad. Made a lot of mistakes along the way, trying it for my first time though. But
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that a few neighbors started to ask me to do it, and it just kind of snowballed and into a business. So
Awesome. What are the most common types of wood that is used for outdoor structures, and what are their pros and cons?
So for what we have in this area, pine is pretty much, I would say, at least probably 75% of what we're going to see,
Hmm.
and usually on decks and fences.
Right.
There are some cedar fences that are out there, not as popular, but of course, as you know, we have a lot of cedar-sided homes here.
Okay.
So that is where we see a lot more of the cedar in our area. Um, in the more western Texas area, cedar fences is really what's the big, that's what's more prevalent there. And then we have a small percentage of decks that are more of the hardwood, like Brazilian hardwoods or Ipe, things like that. Those are a lot more dense, and they don't accept the stain the same way that a normal pine or cedar deck would. So those are a little bit of their own specialty group as well that require a lot more maintenance. They look a lot nicer, but the wood itself is more expensive, and the maintenance
Right.
is more expensive as well.
So we all know wood is a little bit high maintenance. How often should decks and fences be cleaned and treated?
So the biggest thing is, we recommend to try to clean them once a year,
Hmm.
because the big thing and a lot of it depends even on your property. If
Okay.
you're someone that has a lot of trees, it is going to be a lot more shade. There's going to be a lot more shade. So when it rains and it starts getting damp out, especially like right now, this week alone is a perfect example. The sun isn't going to be able to dry it out as much. So in those darker, more damp areas, you're going to see a lot more algae, and mold start on your wood structures.
Right.
So you don't really want to wait until it gets to that point, though, because just like if you went on the subway and you touch that subway rail, your hand won't look dirty, but I don't think you're going to want to go eat right away either. You're going to
Right.
have bacteria on there, and that's what we try to say with a lot of the wood structures is you want to keep up in advance, because that bacteria starts to eat at the wood. So you really want to make sure, we say try to
Hmm.
clean it once a year just to be preventative on that. I know if it's something that you hire a contractor like ourselves, yes, that can start to add up to some of that maintenance costs, but
Hmm.
the way having to replace your, structures, that gets even more costly too. And then you don't have to worry about a more expensive, restoration of your deck or fence too, because
Hmm.
you've been maintaining it. So everything's a lot easier. So we
Sure.
say to try to clean it about once a year. But and that's the most ideal situation.
Great. So for those joining, I see, hi, Laura's back. Julie, hi. Hi, Sam. Hi, Rena. So if you're here, say where you're from, say hi in the chat. Again, we have John Uhas here from Island Wood Staining and Pressure Washing, and we're talking about outdoor wood structures and how to maintain them. So, um, John, my next question for you is, what are the differences between staining and sealing outdoor wood, and which one do you recommend?
So that is a big thing, and it's a great question, because it's something that the word, oh, we want to stain our fence or seal our deck, and they all kind
Right.
of get used interchangeably. Contractors like myself, we kind of refer to the whole process of stain and sealing as just staining,
Hmm.
because I would say, I don't want to say 100% because I don't know what's everything that's out there, but I would say 99% of what you're going to find for exterior stain is going to have a sealant in it. Um, there's a lot of the other types of stains like the Minwax and other things when you're doing more of, teak furniture inside or other little projects. That's where it's just a stain. It's just changing the color of the wood.
Okay.
But when we say, we want to stain our fence, that's going to be a stain and seal. It's a stain and sealant because the stain is what changes the color, but the sealant is what makes it more that waterproof. It protects the wood more. Some of them even have an antifungal solution in there as well, so it kind of helps ward off some of that algae as well too.
Okay.
So when you're talking about any sort of wood structure, you're going to want to at least make sure it's sealed. But the stain and seals kind of goes hand in hand.
How do you choose the right type of stain or sealer?
So when you're starting out fresh with any sort of bare wood, or even if it's an older wood that's become gray or green with algae,
Right.
but it's never had a sealant before, we can come in and when we clean it, we kind of have a fresh palette to start whatever it is that the customer wants. What we recommend, though, is a quality oil-based stain. I say quality because not all oil-based stains are even made the same. Unfortunately, now a lot of oil-based stains, there's some solvents in there, and it's basically all the other junk that doesn't really do anything, but it helps fill the bucket is basically what we say. So we use Expert Stain and Seal. That's the brand that we use, and those are a lot of natural oils. It's very low BOC or the VOCs, so that's what all those components that when you open up and nowadays too, a lot of the regulations have started to make these companies start to lower them anyway. They were a little bit more proactive in it, but when you used to open up a real oil-based stain, that smell would just hit you in the face. So that is all those extra stuff that you don't really need in the stain. It's not going to do anything for you. So oil-based is always the best because it's going to nurture the wood. It's going to help it from drying out. That's when the wood starts to crack and splinter. It's because the wood is just getting dry. And especially if that's kind of that opposite where you may deal with more mold and algae if you're in a more shaded environment, and it won't maybe gray or get as dry as much. But on the other side, if it's more open and you get a lot of sun, you won't have the algae, but you'll start to get more cracking and splintering. So the oil-based stains really help keep that from happening. And the other option is the more water-based stains, like if you see Valspar when you go to Lowe's or Behr when you're in Home Depot.
Right.
Those water-based stains are more film forming. So we kind of call them like a wood paint, basically, is because it doesn't really do much for the wood. It protects it, it waterproofs it, changes the color, but those oil-based stains, they penetrate deep inside the wood. Like I said, they help kind of keep it from cracking and splintering. And something you have to be careful with the water-based is that they form a film over it. So especially if you're doing multiple sides of wood, like a fence, if you're doing both sides of your fence, any moisture that might be in there is being trapped in there. And when people use water-based, you tend to see more rotting of the wood over time because the moisture is trapped, whereas the oil-based helps it breathe a little bit more naturally.
Gotcha. I do want to mention to anybody that is watching, don't forget that we are going to announce a code word for 10% off of your service a little later in the broadcast, so stay tuned for that. My next question for you, John, is what are the most common mistakes people make when they're maintaining their outdoor wood structures?
One of the big things, and I know, times are tough and everyone tries to save some money, and a lot of people will pressure wash their structure themselves. Pressure wash, when you go to pressure wash it and you just get that one from Lowe's or wherever you go, you turn it on, you throw on one of those tips that comes with it, and you just start going at your deck. That's one of the worst things you can do for it. It may look good. You may, knock off a lot of that dirt and algae, and you may expose a new layer of wood, and it will look good, but you're damaging those wood fibers, and you start to, hurt the integrity of the wood. And the more often you do that, obviously, over and over again, it can start to cause damage. And then we're not talking, you get a new deck built, you wash it yourself, and in 2 years it's disintegrating. But when you build a deck, you're hoping to probably get, the life of that home loan, at least you're trying to hope you can get at least the life out of that for the deck. So you want to take every step. So that's a big thing because a lot of people do have pressure washers and they try to do it themselves. And some do great jobs, don't get me wrong, but you have to be very careful. And then if you start and stop too much in the middle, you
Hmm.
get a lot of these lines that occur in your wood. And then now you have to start sanding everything down a lot deeper to kind of even everything out. So that's one of the things that we see a lot. The other thing is that water-based stain on the decks. I know if we're waterproofing it, water-based has a lot more color options because like it's just like paint. You could you go to Lowe's and there's so many different colors to choose from, and they
Yes.
could basically tint it a lot easier when it's water-based like that. Whereas oils, some companies they don't really make a whole lot of different colors. So sometimes people choose water-based just because of the color, but don't always realize that you're not doing as much for your wood. And when we kind of mention that to people, say, you know what, I really wanted this color, but I'd rather go with this just because it's going to do more for it. So those are kind of the two big things that we see people not really understanding the thought that goes into selecting the stain.
Great, that's important to know. If this is resonating or triggering something for any of you watching, go ahead and put your answers down below and we'll get to them. Can you explain the importance of proper ventilation when you're staining or sealing your outdoor wood?
So a big thing that when we see this is sometimes the more of the concern is if you have any sort of like covered porches or anything like that, that maybe either just maybe don't have screens or if they have some people have shutters on them. That's where you want to have a little bit more concern. You think, oh, I'm outside, but depending on the kind of brand you use, they may have some of those VOCs or volatile organic compounds, and those are the ones that really give you that smell. And those are those more carcinogenic type of things that are in there that for a homeowner every once in a while isn't a big deal, but something that we consider when applying it on a
Hmm.
more regular basis. You want to think of those, but if you're outside on a deck or a fence, you don't really have to worry about that too much as long as you're using something, and those are all on the labels. Usually you can see something and it's VOCs is what you'll see. And that's something that you want to find a lower amount. And I think New York
Okay.
is a little more regulated with that. So they are pretty low now anyway, more recently in the last couple of years. So you probably aren't going to encounter too much of an issue when it comes to that.
Great. What are some of the environmental factors that can affect outdoor wood and how can they be mitigated?
So that's always the biggest struggle.
Hmm.
It's rain and it's sun. Those are the two biggest things. Snow a little bit too, kind of depending, because how our winters have been a little more mild, I think. But
Hmm.
if we do get pounded with a lot of snow and it sits on that for a while, it's that water is just sitting there.
Hmm.
So there are some people that actually do opt to do it right at kind of the end of the season in the fall because they want to protect it over the winter. Some people do it more in the springtime because that's when now I'm going to start to be outside. So I don't really care what it looks like in the winter.
Right.
I want when my friends come over in the springtime. So
Yeah.
rain is a big thing. And like as I mentioned, the sun is what grays the wood. So when you see those cedar homes, the ones that are a little bit more of a shade, they have touches of that green algae, but you still sometimes will see those cedar shakes have that nice golden color still, but then the sides that face the sun look all gray. So you can walk around four sides of a cedar house and see four different colors. And those are the kind of those that the moisture and the sun kind of all do that. So
Right.
we also offer, cleaning and staining for the cedar shake homes too, and that gets everything all the same color. And those pigments, all that coloring, that tint that's in that stain that we put on,
Hmm.
we have cedar colors, so it is still gives it that kind of natural color anyway. You're not really changing the color too much, but you are putting a pigment that is going to help keep the sun from graying anything, and you'll have a more consistent color throughout your home, especially your fence too. If some people who have a wood fence, you might see that too in different areas of the backyard.
Absolutely. What about insect infestations? Excuse me. How
Yes,
can
it's
homeowners
okay.
protect their fences and their decks from that?
So so some stains do help, but one thing that we offer too, that the manufacturer that we use, again, is Expert Stain and Seal.
Mhm.
That brand, that company, they created a citronella additive that goes into the
Oh,
stain. So what
okay.
we would do is, and it's a small bottle, but
Mhm.
it gets mixed into a whole 5-gallon bucket. So as we uh, stain the structure, that citronella is in there, and now that kind of helps ward off, just like the candles and everything else that we all use outside for the bugs.
Right.
But now it's built in, it's being absorbed and penetrated into the wood, and especially carpenter bees. Anyone
Mhm.
that's got something with that, that's a big thing. That's where you're really going to see the difference. I don't want to say that you spray the citronella and you're not going to have any bugs around your deck.
Mhm.
It's really geared a lot more towards the insects that are going to actually damage the wood in some way.
Okay.
And that additive too can, even if it's someone who says, you know what, I really don't want to stain my deck or the upkeep or anything of that nature, but I've got carpenter bees, we can actually take this additive and we can add it to water and then just spray your deck with the water,
Oh, okay.
and and the water adds as a courier for that citronella. It'll go
Mhm.
throughout the deck, and that citronella will be in there, and then now that's going to help you as well.
That's excellent. What are some signs that indicate it's time to replace your outdoor wood instead of trying to maintain it?
The biggest thing is, especially for decks, is
Mhm.
obviously always going to be that safety concern. If you start getting, some of that wood rot,
Mhm.
where your child's going to step into that plank or the railing, someone leans against it too much, the railing falls over. Those, of course, are always going to be the biggest things. We do some minor replacements of things like that, but depending the extent of it, and especially with railings, once they get a little higher, um, we do not do much railings because it's more of the
Mhm.
insurance liability that we're not covered for things of that nature for
Okay.
building. But those are going to be the biggest things that you're going to want to. But if it's a matter of just, doesn't look nice, it's a little just dirty and green and some splintering,
Mhm.
we can still take care of that. We do sanding as well. Depending on the extent, it might be, an additional service, but minor sanding is included within our normal stain service itself too.
Excellent.
So we do some of that, but yeah, once you start getting to wood starting to disintegrate, that's where you're going to have to definitely replace something.
Excellent. How can homeowners prevent water damage to their outdoor wood structures?
So the biggest thing is that stain and seal. That's what it
Okay.
comes down to.
Mhm.
When it comes down to those outdoor structures, pergolas, even, that stain and seal, because and if it's more of a DIY, always make sure that when you go to select whatever product, when you're going to purchase it, make sure it is exterior. I like I said, I haven't seen exterior stains that do not have a sealant on them, but that's just always something to kind of really read that labels, just so anyone
Mhm.
picks something out, they don't get that misnomer that, oh, I thought this was protected. But that's that waterproofing that you're going to see, that sealer. So after you put it on there and it's all cured and dries, you splash a little water on there and it should bead up just like it was on a rain jacket or something. And
Uh-huh.
that is how you know it's protected. And then moving down the road, a
Mhm.
year or two later, depending on the wear and tear you have, or the exposure to the elements, if you start to notice that basically that splash test, we call it, you sprinkle some water on there and it just kind of absorbs right in.
Mhm.
Now you know that, hey, my sealant's gone. Your stain might look okay,
Right.
but we lost those sealant properties, and we may just need a maintenance coat. And that's why we try to get on maintenance plans as much as possible with people, because that way we can kind of be in front of it, and we can try to really extend that longevity the most as possible.
Great. Excellent tips. I wanted to remind everybody that John is going to be offering a 10% discount on his services for anyone who is watching. We are going to announce the code word for that in just a little bit. And our next question is, how do you maintain the color of your outdoor wood, particularly when it's exposed to direct sunlight?
So the biggest thing, like I said, that sunlight is going to gray that wood. When you see the wood that's gray, that means the wood fibers are
Mhm.
kind of dying basically. So in order to protect that, that's where that stain aspect of your stain and sealer is going to come into play, because we kind of use the analogy that the sealer is more like eyeglasses. You know, it's going to protect you from the water, but you can't go look at the sun. It's not going to help you from the UV rays. You need sunglasses. So those sunglasses is that tint.
Hmm.
That's what that stain aspect of it is, and that is what's going to protect it from the sun the most.
Right.
Now there are multiple colors that we have: cedar, pecan, light honey. Those are three that are very more on like the more neutral wood color side of things,
Okay.
and those are going to give you a more natural look. A lot of people ask us, oh, I want to keep this color, brand new pool deck or something. I want to keep it this color. I just want to use clear. That's great. But if you have a lot of sunlight, it's going to turn gray. So that's why
Okay.
we always offer some of those colors. And we can always add the clear to that and kind of dilute the color down a little bit. So if we want to take a little shade or two off, we can always do that as well. You're not watering it down because we're just using clear, so you have that full 100% protective part of it. But some
Great.
people want that light honey but just not quite as golden, and we can always do that as well too, a more natural look.
Excellent. Can you explain the differences between pressure washing and soft washing and which one you recommend for your outdoor wood?
So soft washing is not a very common term
Hmm.
amongst homeowners, but anytime people go on those community groups and they say, oh, I need someone to pressure wash my house, hopefully they're not pressure washing your house, they're soft washing. And that process is a more gentle,
Uh-huh.
higher volume, but lower pressure. Basically, if you think about a garden hose, when you just have no attachment, you have your garden hose, you have this nice large volume of water coming out, and you
Hmm.
start moving your thumb over more and more to, spray people. That's when
Yeah.
you start to increase you're decreasing the volume, but you're increasing the pressure. So that's what
Okay.
a pressure washer is basically more or less doing, to oversimplify it. A lot of
Hmm.
those tips that come with a pressure washer are very small holes that will increase that pressure, and that's what's can start to damage things. Even vinyl siding, you can start to force water up and under. When it comes to the wood, you're going to start splintering your wood more. So the soft washing aspect, we use the cleaners that are going to do a lot of that work. We're going to gently just basically, we're going to apply them. Sometimes, depending on the size of the deck, I did one today, just use the pump up sprayer if it's small enough. But otherwise, we have other systems on our trailer that apply this large volume of the cleaner onto it. We let it sit, do all the work, and then we may use our pressure washer, but we have a wide array of tips that are much, much bigger than anything you're going to get with your pressure washer.
Okay.
And it really reduces that pressure into a more what's called soft washing because it's a softer, gentler.
Okay.
I could take it and put my hand right in front of my wand and I'm not going to hurt myself with what we have. And that's going to just rinse everything off,
Hmm.
maybe kind of give a little bit of an agitation to scrub off anything that might be on there, but it's going
Sure.
to be safe for the wood. We don't really, quote unquote, pressure wash anything other than concrete, basically. Anytime it comes to those more delicate things like wood, it's always going to be a soft wash. And like I said earlier, that's one of those mistakes some homeowners make is because they
Hmm.
see something on HGTV or something on YouTube and they think, oh, I can do that. You can, but you got to have a lot of right techniques if you're going to use those. So it's one of those things that we always recommend. I know people don't like to do it themselves. It's always, I'm a big DIY kind of person too, but that's why we've actually even changed our terminology. We don't come and schedule an estimate for you. We schedule a consultation because at the
Hmm.
end of the day, even if you don't go with us, if you want to do it yourself or you decide maybe there's a cheaper or company, or maybe there's a company that oh my brother knows this guy, you should use him. We want to educate the homeowner when we're there,
Hmm.
so when we leave, whether they go with us or a different route, they at least have all that knowledge that they need to make the right decision on how they're going to address it.
Excellent. Thank you. What are some maintenance tips that you would give to homeowners who want to keep their outdoor wood structures looking great all year?
So a big thing, especially with decks, because you have that flat surface, so it holds a lot more. You go to look at a deck, whether it's been, never been touched at all, or something that was stained and sealed 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's always that flat all the flats, all the flooring, the stairs, or the top of the railing, those are where you're going to see the biggest failures in the stain sooner.
Mhm.
The spindles, anything vertical, even a fence too. That's one of those things that um, we don't see the wear as quickly. So what we kind of tell some people too, kind of in between, is actually a friend of mine even asked too what to do with his deck.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just even a soap and water. You know, you just get a bucket with like a softer bristle deck brush or something, and
Okay.
that can kind of be even a. I mean, that could be a monthly thing that you do yourself, and that kind of helps even too get some of the dirt off, because you may have a more open, sun exposed um, deck, so you're not going to have a lot of the mold or algae, but you'll have the ability to at least get some of that dirt off and keep it from starting to build up.
Great, excellent tips. So can you tell us about some of your favorite projects you've completed? What gets you excited about this?
Um, so all of it really. You know, it's one of those things that I think some people don't realize what we're capable of. You know, and not just
Mhm.
us, but just the industry. Anyone who's a quote unquote wood care expert or professional in wood maintenance,
Mhm.
um, it really can be one of these eye-opening things. And if you go to our page, whether it's our website at islandwashnstain.com, or um, your or you go to our Facebook page at Island Wood Staining and Pressure Washing. We have a lot of pictures, and we did one just last week where they had a beautiful deck out. They had all this, you know, kitchens and refrigerators. They even had the little icy machines and everything for the kids. But all
Uh,
that cooking and food, they got a lot of grease and everything and food
yep.
on there. And it was a nice entertaining space, but the deck didn't look that great. So we were able
Mhm.
to go in there. We used our degreasers and a lot of other different wood things, wood cleaners, and we cleaned it all off, and it looked brand new. And he came out and he was just like, oh my god, like people don't, I don't think, realize, like, they can look at the pictures but then they think, ah, but they probably can't do that for us. And then when we go in and we do it, and they, you kind of see that your their face, and they're just like, oh my god, like they're so happy that this, you know, $10,000 deck doesn't, you know, they're not embarrassed of that anymore. You know,
Mhm.
that's one of those things. You know, something too, we did recently, we did we were actually, so I actually operated down in North Carolina for a few years too before we moved back up north to Long Island, and
Uh-huh.
we had a dock that was on the lake. So we had a boat slip. He had the bridge coming back up to the property. He had a
Wow.
gazebo and everything, and it wasn't taken care of in a long time. And we came in, we cleaned everything, we got a lot of the algae off, and for that we had to use some eco-friendly cleaners as well over the water. And when it was all said and done, he looked at it, and it was just before Memorial Day. We battled the rain a little bit too, just like we are right now. And when after he spent Memorial Day weekend with his friends and his family, he messaged me and was just like, I couldn't believe like what you guys did. You know, he really thought that some of this was just long gone. People,
Right.
oh, I just want to make it look better than what it is. But then when we're done, they look at it like they just don't expect it. And you
It's
know,
transformed.
we pay a lot of attention to detail. You know, we you know, to be completely transparent, we are probably a little bit more than our estimates than some of the other companies out there, but we take our time. You know, we're
Mhm.
not going to just price things just to hope we get a job. And then when you're starting to take the time it needs, you realize, oh, some companies are, oh, we're losing money, and they just rush and get the job done. And then you miss spots here. It's not, you know, you didn't apply it enough in this area. They get stain on the siding. So we take our time. You
Mhm.
know, we treat it. We don't even want to say we treat it like our own house, because, you know, everyone knows sometimes it's your own home and you don't really care too much. But so we treat it better than our own home. You know,
That's
and we really
great.
make sure that, you know, we take that attention to detail. And it's those little things that when people notice those, that's what makes us, I think, the happiest when we complete a job.
That's excellent. So my last question for you is about any other services that you offer. But before we chat about that, I want to give you the opportunity to announce the code for
Yes.
10% off.
Yes. So the code for 10% off is going to be live 10. That's LIVE and the number 10. So anytime you contact us, whether it's through our website, we have a contact form on there, through Facebook Messenger, our phone number, you can text our phone number as well. You reach out to us, you mention this video, the code LIVE10, and you get 10% off, whether it's, we offer house washing too. We offer all types of wood cleaning and staining, whether it's for a cedar home, decks, fences, pergolas, and we actually also offer paver sealing and resanding as well too. So any of those services that we offer, 10% off, and just use the code LIVE10.
Excellent. So if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and put them below. John, if you want, I'll type in your website here.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Habit Island. Wash and stain. Thank you to everybody who stuck around while we had a little bit of technical difficulty, but we got them
sorry
on.
about that.
It happens every now and then. It's just meta, man.
Yeah.
Sam said, I learned a lot. Super informative. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that. I know it's one of those things that, sometimes kind of people take for granted, that they say, oh, I'm just putting stain on something, but there is a little bit more thought that goes into it, really making sure that you understand what it is you're doing. And that's, like I said, that's why we call it a consultation, because even if you decide, it's just not in my budget, we completely understand, we have a budget of ourselves, within the business in our own home. So we get it. But the biggest thing is that we want to see people being informed, because one of the things we cringe about the most is, you see someone built a brand new deck and they use water-based stain on it. And again, it's not the worst thing in the world, because it is still protecting it, but it can be a lot to maintain that, because that water base will start to peel and flake, and it becomes much harder to maintain or restain down the road, whereas an oil-based will actually kind of fade more. So it's much smoother. It's not flaking or chipping, and it's a lot easier, whether it's yourself or you call us in. So it's those things that I think people take for granted, and they don't really realize, what's going on, so we really like to inform people so they just kind of understand the whole process.
That's great. We very much appreciate it. Kathy says, thank you. Rena says, oh, she's going to look at some paint and stain for herself tomorrow. Awesome.
Perfect.
Well, good luck, Rena. If anybody has any questions, you're going to find John in the group.
Yes,
definitely. So if you would like to reach out to him to start a project, I put his website here. He also has a Facebook, and you could reach out to him on the group as well. So thank you so much, John.
No problem. You're welcome. And the other thing too, there is, like I said, the one stain company that we use, it is accessible to homeowners as well, and that's Expert Stain and Seal. So great. If you guys lose this video or anything, that's always something I can message us, and I can direct you guys over there, and then you guys can always purchase it. They ship it right to your house for you in the colors and everything. And especially if you're dealing with bare wood, that is the route to go. That's what we use, and that you won't be disappointed in it.
Excellent. So informative, so helpful, very appreciated.
Great.
Well, we look forward to having you in the group, and we will talk soon. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Good night, everybody. LIVE10, don't forget.
Yes.